And I think in the same vein, as you kindly mentioned, and Robbie Diamond, the head of the Electrification Coalition, is here, we have got to get out of the business of sending between $300 and $500 billion of the United States wealth to the producers of oil. 60% of our oil is now imported. 90% of the oil reserves are not owned by Exxon and Chevron. They're owned by nationalized oil companies, many of whose owners, the regimes that own these things, have interest inimical to ours, some of them even potential enemies. So we are fueling a great deal of our own problems, and no one can honestly look at the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan and not recognize that they are caused by our dependence on oil. They're directly related. The 5,000 youngsters we've lost, the thousands we've had maimed and are sitting up in Bethesda, and it's a national disgrace. And there now is a capability to change that. We can electrify our short-haul transportation system because of the advancements in battery technology. And the good news about it is that the power to fuel all those automobiles we already produce. We just waste it at night. It goes away as heat. In fact, one study, I can't remember, one of the Pacific Northwest universities looked at it and said there's enough power produced in the middle of the night that if you could magically convert all 250 private automobiles over to it, would be free. Now, that's hypothetical. Let's just say that's half right. And the distribution system is there. All it takes are a few now relatively inexpensive appliances at home or in the big box retailer's yard. And in the commercial area, it costs about 80% less to produce a mile of transportation with electric power than it does with diesel or gasoline. So we're not talking about something that's less productive or like solar or wind who can't compete with natural gas. And the power supply is domestic and it's diversified and it's stable. Nuclear, hydroelectric, solar, wind, coal, whatever you want. Now my good friend Ed Crane, he and I are both free marketeers, but he's accused me in the past of being an apostate on this. And to some degree he's right, but I don't look at our oil dependence as a free market solution, because the people that control the oil market, if they were doing what they are doing in this country, would be sent to jail. There are cartel fixing prices. And the Saudi oil minister, I think just a couple of weeks ago, said they now concluded that maybe $90 a barrel would be an acceptable price. So over the last few months, while we've been debating here in Washington, we've had a tax increase in this country of about $70 billion. That's the increase of what we're all paying at the pump, from $70 a barrel to $85 a barrel. And every major recession this country has had since the first Arab oil embargo in 1973 has been precipitated by an oil crisis. And this one, the meltdown on the financial sector, is no exception. The oil prices ran up to $147 a barrel in July 2008, and the subprime borrower was literally forced to make the choice between paying the mortgage or paying the gas to go to work. So we need to address this. It's not a market issue at all. It's a military and geopolitical situation. People forget that the war that General Marshall won was started on our part over a dispute about oil. We embargoed the oil for Japan, and that was the causa belli that caused them to attack us at Pearl Harbor, because they were being starved. Their industry was being starved. So we're going to get into a big conflict over this as these other economies emerge if we don't go back and become self-sufficient. General Eisenhower said a reliance on imported oil greater than 15% was a national emergency, was a national challenge that was of an emergency level. And here we are at almost 60%. Fortunately, technology has got a solution, and I think that should be a matter of national policy. Now, with all due deference to a lot of the military folks here, I think they would tell you that a huge part of our $700 billion military budget is spent protecting the oil trades. So the cost of electrifying short-haul transportation, which can take our consumption in the light-duty vehicle sector from about 14 million barrels of oil a day to 4 million barrels of oil a day in 2035, these are big numbers, can be paid for in many ways, and it's a relatively modest amount of money. It's about $100 billion to make the transition over a 10-year period to save $300 to $400 billion a year in money we're exporting. So I'm sorry to get on my soapbox here, but if we don't look at these things more holistically, we're going to be spinning our wheels, and we'll be talking about the same things 5 or 10 years from now, only a much poorer nation.
I have one final question I want to ask you. In your foreword to the book that was mentioned earlier, Soldier, Statesman, Peacemaker, about General Marshall, you say this: "It was his strength of character that led Marshall to always do the right thing at the right time, or to select others able to do so." This is, in a funny way, almost a question of faith or metaphysics. Do you still have confidence in America's ability and good fortune to find the men and women to lead us through times of trouble?
I do. I see that in so many different ways. For one, I think you saw a citizen army arise to some derision from some parts of society just this last election. I mean, there are all sorts of people that are coming here to Congress that I think one man has a restaurant, or he was in the pizza business, and I've read all of these resumes. I mean, they certainly thought that the gong had sounded and they needed to put themselves forward. I think the second thing that has happened, and I think this is the great thing about what you do in the modern communications, you can't hide anything anymore. People now understand the size and scope of this problem. It was a self-mobilizing group out there. So I do think that they're going to insist that something be done, and I think people at their heart understand that it might not be something that all of us would prefer, but the United States has to maintain its leadership role. There's no option to that. It's like Jerry Garcia, the Grateful Dead. You remember that famous quote from him? And it means something that's just got to be done, and it's a damn shame it has to be us to do it. So I think that people will arise, and I think today in the paper they just said the thing: the Senate Republicans, no more earmarks. I mean, that's a sign of progress. I think they're listening to people. So hopefully things will head in the right direction, but I've got great confidence in the United States. And I'll tell you one thing that'll do your heart good is anybody spends any time with our military, just the quality of, gosh, there's so much, first, they're so much better looking than we were in my day. You know, there's better, more fit and what have you. We were a mess, but they're just the greatest people. So, I mean, any nation that can produce folks like that, and the kids that are coming out of Rensselaer that I watched, or Harvard or Yale, I have confidence we'll get this thing in the right direction.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for your insights. Congratulations on this award.
Thank you.